Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's February 14th. It's Valentine's Day. It's a good day. It's a happy day. Should be a happy day, although in the American soccer universe, nobody's ever happy. Man. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to talk about 2020 American soccer predictions. And yeah, some of them could actually be positive ones too. So we're going to get into that. Share your 2020 American soccer predictions with us on Twitter at Soccer Down Here, or any questions, comments, whatever you have on your mind on a Friday. It is the Friday before competitive matches get started. Tuesday, things get real in the CONCACAF Champions League. Atlanta United will be playing on Tuesday night. You will be able to watch that match on TUDN Extra 1. You'll be able to watch that match on Fox Soccer Plus. You'll be able to watch that match on any or at any establishment that has either one of those channels. We know the Brewhouse Cafe in Little 5 Points will have that for you. I'm assuming there's quite a few others around the metro area and also around the southeast region. But those are your channels you're looking for. You can also listen to the Atlanta United call on 92.9 The Game on the radio.com app, and we'll have pre-match coverage starting at 9:30. That's Tuesday. What do we have before that? We have a huge event tomorrow at Wild Heaven West End. It is an awesome brewery if you have not been there. We've done one event there already. This one's going to be in an even bigger space in the venue because it's a bigger event. It is our 2020 kickoff party. We've got all the supporters groups coming out. We've got Resurgence. We've got Terminus Legion. We've got Faction. We've got Footy Mob. We're going to have a roundtable discussion with reps from each of the groups, not just about the upcoming season, but kind of about the upcoming season for them and culture and what they help create here in Atlanta and with Atlanta United, and challenges that go along with that, and also some of the positive stories that have come out of it as well. But more importantly, we're going to hang out with all of you guys. So we'd love to see you tomorrow. We'll be there from 10 to 2. Programming in terms of a show will start at 12. We've got some coaching education, some activities for kids in the 10 to 12 portion. Our friends from Soccer in the Streets will be on hand. It's going to be a fun event. One thing I ask you guys is, if you're coming out to hang out with us, bring in a used soccer ball or grab one at a local Target, Walmart, sporting goods store, what have you. Bring a soccer ball. We are raising equipment for a middle school program in Clayton County that's trying to get a soccer program started. They need soccer balls, they need cones, and they need pennies. We've got some portable goals thanks to a great donation, but we're looking for soccer balls, cones, and pennies. So if you have some used ones that are still usable, please bring them to us tomorrow at Wild Heaven West End, or if you want to help out in a different way, don't hesitate to reach out. Trying to spread the game on a Valentine's Friday. We've also got some other programming coming up the rest of the weekend that you need to be on the SDH app looking for. Later today, we'll have another hashtag for the kids. Digging into the youth game, I had a chance to talk to Jonathan Cueva, who is one of the owners, operators of Rockport Soccer up in Gainesville. And it was a fun conversation. I've followed Rockport for a little while. They get big into the futsal community up in Gainesville, but they've also kind of created a unique culture up there. And Jonathan and I kind of dug into the culture element of not just Gainesville, but American soccer as a whole. It was a really fun conversation. We'll be doing more with Rockport, as we go, but that'll come out later this afternoon. We'll have some crumpets and espresso to get you ready for the preview of soccer around the world. That'll be late in the afternoon as well. John, you've got a couple of pieces coming out this weekend to go along with all that.
Yeah, we caught up with Rob Salvatore, who is now the executive director and the new co-owner of the Charleston Battery. Had a good 20-minute conversation with him about why he was interested in adding the Battery to his portfolio, expectations, the move back to Patriots Point off of Daniel Island. It was a wide-ranging conversation. It was good to catch up with him and get the lay of the land for Charleston, and also our review of our preview, really, of the Atlanta United 2 season from Media Day when we went up there. Caught up with Stephen Glass, caught up with Bradley Camden-Feo, caught up with Lawrence Weich. Great stories there. So those interviews will be relayed this weekend as well. So it's a busy weekend for content, busy weekend for stuff here on the SDH universe, and that's the official term, stuff.
Yep, lots of it. Lots and lots of it. The question today is predictions, 2020 predictions. What do you think is going to happen, whether that's Atlanta United related, MLS related, U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team, NWSL, wherever you want to take it. It's open-ended predictions we are requesting. One thing that's not a prediction, but it's at least a hope for me, and I don't know, maybe it's the Valentine's Day spirit. I'm really just blown away by the overwhelming negativity in the way soccer's talked about in this country. And I don't know why it's all of a sudden stuck with me here lately, but it really feels like everybody that is out there using their voice in the game, and let me rephrase, not everybody, but the overwhelming majority are using it to spread negativity, frustration, anger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And look, I get it. It's easier to write a sad song or an angry song than it is to write a happy song. You want to go do a search of great sad songs or great angry songs, there's a ton to choose from. Great happy songs? It's a smaller list. It's easy to focus on the negative, but man, it wears you out. And at times it really, I can speak for me, it wears me out. There's a lot of good things happening in soccer in the United States. Are there things that need to change? Absolutely. We talk about them every day. Are there things that can be better? Yes. But it just is, I don't know, tiring when everything is bad, negative, this sucks. It's a turnoff to people. And look, I've heard this from people who are not in the soccer bubble, people who, do not consume all the streaming services and read every blog and listen to every podcast, people who are fans, passionate, spend a lot of money to support their team, spend a lot of time to support their team, but they don't get into that bubble. One of the reasons that either they haven't gotten into soccer before or they don't get into it as much as some of the rest of us is that negativity. Everything is pushing people away at times instead of opening the door and saying, hey, come in. This is a fun place. This is a good game. We enjoy our time watching the game. I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's easy to focus on negative. It's easy to get overwhelmed by negative. It's very easy to be cynical. And if there was an overwhelming, character trait of American soccer, cynicism would be it. And maybe my aversion to it is just that I despise cynicism. I get so tired of it. It doesn't mean you have to only look at the positive. It doesn't mean you ignore the negative. Don't get me wrong. But if you don't follow kind of where things have come from, and if you just listen to some of the voices out there about the game, you would think it's in a horrible place, and it's just not. Can it be better? Absolutely. I don't like certain rule changes that are being proposed. There's things in MLS that I want them to change. But more importantly, I want American soccer's personality to change. I don't want it to be a negative place anymore. I don't want it to be a place that if you use the wrong terminology, you get yelled at. I don't want it to be a place that, you get screamed at if you call it a 3-4-3 instead of a 3-5-2 or vice versa. I mean, come on. It doesn't have to be that way. you can actually discuss things without turning it negative, attacking people, and all the like. I really hope that can happen. It's not a prediction for 2020. It's just a hope. And it's probably only going to be a hope because there will be something that'll piss all of us off or get us riled up, and we'll all go back to our negative places. I just hope from time to time you can get out of that negative place and talk about the things you enjoy about the game. You know, is it a certain style of play? Is it a certain player? Is it a certain thing that happens in a match? Is it a certain thing about the culture of the game? It is okay to back up some of the negatives and some of the things that we all want to see get better. It is okay to back that up with some of the things that we like and some of the things that we enjoy and celebrate those. And I hope that can grow in 2020. I hope that we're in a more positive place at the end of this year about the league, and not just MLS, about USL Championship, about USL League One, about NISA, about NPSL, about USL League Two, about the UPSL, about all of the other leagues that are going on around. I hope that we're in a more positive place, looking at them, what they're doing for the good of the game. I hope the youth game is in a more positive place and stops fighting one another on a regular basis. I hope that everything progresses. I hope that U.S. Soccer can stop, as the federation, by the way, I hope that they can stop fighting their men's and women's national team player unions and actually figure out a way to work together. The MLS Players Association and the league were maybe the most collaborative collective bargaining agreement that we've ever seen in American soccer. I hope that maybe that can show the way, but judging from the statements that have come out this week, probably not. I hope that people who love the game can work to grow the game rather than tear it down and make people feel either out of place, unwelcome, or that everything is about to collapse, because it's not. I really hope that can be what comes out of 2020 by the end of it, and it's just a happier place. And look, there's times where I don't want anything to do with social media, especially involving soccer, because it just feels like I'm either getting yelled at or everything's about to collapse in something that I really care about. And I just don't believe those things. Maybe that's me being, what was I called one time? A sunshine pumper. Just a great thing to be called, but actually a great thing to be. I'd rather pump sunshine than thunderstorms. I'll be a sunshine pumper. That's fine. I'll be an American soccer sunshine pumper. I will be that guy because nobody else is. So,
hashtag sunshine pumper.
I'll take that on. I will pump sunshine if I can. So just a random thought as it feels like, man, we're about to turn into a new season, and that's usually a time for excitement and hope and trying to find all that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I'm just going to second your. I'm just going to second your motion to the floor. I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to add to it, considering that I'm with you. There's nothing wrong with constructive criticism, and I would hope that folks don't shy away from that when it comes to your team, your players, what have you.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's all about moving the game, growing the game forward. I mean, think about all the stories that we cover on practically a daily basis. I mean, with Nashville being the most recent example, and Ian Ayre saying that there are 40,000 tickets already sold for the match against Atlanta United. That kind of stuff is what I'd like to have drive conversations when it's out there, as opposed to sitting there and saying, well, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, and you're a hashtag sunshine pumper. Let's grow the game.
I will. What I'm going to try to do in 2020, and it's a very late New Year's resolution, is I will try to live up to the hashtag sunshine pumper. I will try to do that where it's warranted. I'm not going to force it because, yes, there are times where bad things happen. You got to talk about it, and we've done that plenty here. But there's also, I feel like at times, a lack of interest in talking about good things or burying good things or looking very hard to find bad things. And it's just, come on, let's let's move a little forward here. There is a point. I mean, if you've been in the game for any period of time, you've went through the times where nobody wanted to hear you talk about soccer. That you've gone through the times where you couldn't find a game on TV, you couldn't find anything to read about it. You were fighting against the darkness. And now that you're not, you can be a little more optimistic about where things are going and actually try to bring more people to the party. That's what I hope continues to happen here. I think that's been a hallmark of Atlanta United and the growing Southern soccer culture is people have brought others to the party, and you haven't seen as much of that old school soccer negativity in the South, although it's growing, and it doesn't have to. It really doesn't. So we'll see where it goes. There's your sunshine pumping of the morning. So there you go. Go ahead and at me on it. It's all good. So we're going to get into predictions this morning. I want to hear whatever it is you guys want to make a prediction about, whether it's Atlanta United, MLS, etc. MLS, I look at this season as a very important one. You've got the CBA done. You know where things stand over the next 4 years. You are making big, bold statements about wanting to compete with Mexico in CONCACAF Champions League. And I feel like you're closer than you've ever been, although you still have work to do. And at some point, you just have to actually win the games in front of you. I think Atlanta United, I think LAFC, even with the Walker Zimmerman trade, are teams that can advance in this tournament. I think Seattle is a team that can advance past Olympia, and then some of it's going to be down to how they gel because there's more questions about them than maybe some of the others. New York City, I think, has a great first-round draw, and they need that as they enter the tournament for the first time, and they have a new manager. I can't wait to see what Ronnie Dyla does with that group because they have the most continuity of any team in the league with all their starters back and all their key reserve players back. The question is, does Dyla change things up, or does he roll with what worked last year and add his tweaks slowly along the way? Montreal, who knows? New manager, a lot of questions about the impact, and they have a tough draw with Saprissa. They won, the Canadian Championship to get here, which is an easier road to get into this, so they're the least heralded MLS team in the tournament. It's a huge deal. And starting next week, these games count. And preseason ideas of building, which will continue, but you got to build and get a result now. If you're Atlanta United, you need to go in and manage the game in Motagua and get out of there without getting hurt. LAFC has to be able to do the same against Club Leon, and that's going to be really difficult. Montreal at Saprissa, you're holding on for dear life to make that a manageable match going into the second leg. New York City should be okay going into San Carlos, although San Carlos will be jacked because this is their first CONCACAF Champions League match as well. So it's a huge opportunity for them to bring a team into their venue and represent a team that's been on the rise in Costa Rica. And Seattle is facing Olympia, who has been a very good team over the last year. They've just got to find a way in these away legs to manage it better than some teams have in the past, and take care of business in the home leg, where I do think all of these teams, even Montreal, will be favored in that home leg. How you manage getting there is going to be the story of next week.
And just, this is the time to remind folks, it's over 180 minutes. And, what you're looking for when you're on the road, win, fantastic. Get out of town. Draw, great. Get out of town. Lose by one, okay. Take care of business at home. Lose by more than one, then it's a mountain to climb. But it's a lot of folks, just remember, 180 minutes here. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's a situation. A lot of people talk about these kinds of two-leg aggregate series as one where you can't win it in the first 90 minutes, but you can lose it.
Yes.
And even that is a stretch, but you get the point. If you create a big hole for yourself, that gives the team, and you're on the road in that first leg, it gives that team the opportunity to come into your building and park a bus and slash tires and sit back and defend and make it difficult for you over the next 90 minutes. You got to manage the first 90. And sometimes it's cagey, and sometimes it's maybe not the most entertaining match for a neutral, but it's about managing the emotion of it and managing the situation. That's what Atlanta has to do. And going to Motagua, you're facing a team with a lot of veteran experience. You're facing a team that is in good form as of late, better form now than they were in the Apertura last year. They finished third in the season in the Apertura. They did not win the pentagonal playoff format, which is just bonkers. They didn't win that. That actually is kind of an important factor in this match, because in league play, the way the playoffs work in Honduras, you've got 10 teams. You do an Apertura and a Clausura, so you're splitting the season. You're playing 18 games in each. But you look at that, you're like, oh man, that's only 18 games, and they're going to have to potentially sacrifice league games when they're dealing with CONCACAF, because their schedule, they played Wednesday, they play Saturday, and it's a big game with Real España on Saturday. Then they play in the Saturday in between the two legs. Like, oh, they're going to have to rotate, whatever. The problem is they have a pentagonal playoff format. So what that means is the top 5 teams go into the playoffs. So half the teams go into the playoffs. And in the playoff format, you play everybody once. So you're playing 4 games in the playoffs. So you have a lot of forgiveness in the way the format is set up. So you look at the Clausura standings in Honduras. Motagua's in the top spot with 16 points through 7 matches, 5-1-1. Marathon is 1 point back. Vida is a bit of a surprise in 3rd. Real España in 4th, and Olympia in 5th on 11. Motagua has an 8-point lead on 6th place. Now, they don't want to finish in 5th because it affects who hosts those pentagonal matches. The higher seed hosts them. So you want to be a top seed, but you've got a good bit of cushion right now to where, all right, you might have to play top guys against Real España and then turn around and do it on Tuesday against Atlanta. But then maybe in that league match in between, you can take a risk. You go on the road to a Real de Minas, and that is the team in 7th place at 2-4-1 right now. So you might be able to rest guys ahead of the trip to Atlanta. I think what also comes into play here is if it turns into a bad day for Motagua, let's say it just falls apart and they end up losing by multiple goals to Atlanta, I think they punt the second leg. I think they probably play a reserve-laden lineup, because then you're all in on league play. But if it's tight, they'll punt the league game in between. If it's tight and they feel like they can survive in Atlanta in that second leg, they'll play reserves against Real de Minas in the Saturday game in between the two legs. So they've got flexibility. Even though they have a crowded schedule, it's 8 games over 30 days. I think it started Wednesday, or it starts this weekend. They've got some flexibility because of the league format. So you look at that and you're like, oh man, they're going to really struggle. But they've got a lot of forgiveness baked into the way that format's set up.
Pentagonal playoff format.
I mean, it's a group stage. It's just half the teams go. And that's the number one thing out of it is, you talk about MLS's playoff format. Half the teams go to this out of 10, and then you're not even in a single game knockout or a 2-leg thing. You get 4 games. And then the wild thing is, if you win the regular season and you don't win the pentagonal playoff, you're not done yet. You get a chance in a grand final to play the winner of the pentagonal group. So if you win the regular season, you don't get a bye, because if you win the pentagonal, you win everything and you don't have to play that one game. But if you don't, you kind of get an out and you get another opportunity to win the title. So it's a really interesting format. It packs a bunch of games into a small space and time, but it's what has brought some other teams into the mix in Honduras. Honduras is a country that has been dominated by Motagua, Olympia, and Marathon, with Real España a step back but has popped up occasionally. But now you're starting to get a club like Vita mixing in. Vita hasn't lost this season. They've drawn 4 times. They've won 3. You're starting to get some other teams step up and have opportunities to win things. And as we've seen in MLS, that's a big part of selling the league, marketing the league, and drawing interest in the league.
No, it's just keep an eye. This is where you have to really do some homework and just kind of keep an eye on things and enjoy the whole process with all of the opposition that's coming in, learning about them, all the research, and all of the different elements that make this a 3-dimensional chase in CONCACAF Champions League. It was interesting for me to hear you lay all that stuff out about context and everything when it came to Motagua over the next handful of days.
Yeah, Olympia is kind of in the same boat, but it's a little more complicated. They played Honduras Progreso on Wednesday, won 5-0, completely comfortable. It's a poor team in Progreso. Yes. But they go to Vita on Saturday. And that's a tough one. That's the 5th-place team in Olympia going to the 3rd-place team, Vita. Then Thursday, they host Seattle, same stadium that Atlanta is playing Motagua. Then on Sunday, the 23rd, they host Marathon, who's the 2nd team in the league right now. So they don't get that easier opponent in between the 2 legs. And then they play Marathon again after the 2nd leg. So just the way the schedule worked out, it's really cruel for Olympia, who's in that 5th spot. Like, they're not guaranteed of anything yet when it comes to the pentagonal. So they're not going to have as much flexibility in maybe resting guys in league matches to deal with Seattle. So that helps the Sounders in a pretty big way here.
Yeah, and I'm still, when it comes to all of the teams in MLS that are active in CONCACAF Champions League, I'm looking at Montreal. That to me is one of the more intriguing elements of this whole thing. With the new coach, with all of the, where Piatti is gone, and we know about the replacements, Lapalainen, et cetera, but just how they're going to be in these first matches early next week. That one for me is the one that I'm going to have my second set of eyes on.
Well, they're facing a team that's in great form in Saprissa. Saprissa is 6-1-2 right now in Costa Rica. They're not scoring a ton of goals, 13 in 9 matches, but they've only conceded 6 in 9. That's incredibly impressive. They have had kind of a weird schedule here. Their game on the weekend has been postponed, so they get to rest. They did play on Wednesday. They won their match on the road against Jicaral. They play on Montreal. They host Montreal on the 19th. Then they do have a league match on the Saturday against the Universidad de Costa Rica team that's in 11th out of 12 right now. So they'll get to play their reserves at home against UCR before going to Montreal. So Saprissa, and this is what happens with some leagues, and I'm a little surprised that Honduras didn't do this for their teams. Costa Rican League is like, nah, you don't have to play this weekend. You're good. Rest. We'll get you ready for Montreal. So the Impact are like, man, we almost got lucky. San Carlos is not in the same boat as Costa Rica. San Carlos has not had a good start to the season. They are 3-4-2. They've lost 4 of their 9. Goal differential's a -2. They're scoring more goals than Saprissa, but they're giving up almost 2 goals a game. So they've got a lot of work to do in league play. They also have not won in their last 5 league matches. So New York City gets an easier opponent. And for whatever reason, and I'm going to have to look into this, maybe Saprissa either lobbied for something or they just got lucky, because San Carlos is listed as playing tomorrow at Herediano. And then they get to host NYC on Thursday. Their match, I think it's involving the opponent, because it's Grecia is the opponent for both, and their match in between the 2 legs right now is postponed. So maybe they got to pick one to postpone, and San Carlos went for the in-between, or there's just something wrong with Grecia. I'm not up on the Costa Rican League news just yet, so I'll have to check into that. But San Carlos going to Herediano before they host NYC, not ideal. Herediano's number 2 in the league. They have not lost. They've drawn 4. They're 9. So NYC, I think, got as good of a draw as you could possibly get for a new manager who's never been in CONCACAF, a team that is back with all of their pieces from last year, but what is Dyla going to do to put his stamp on it? They get a couple of games that they should be just fine in against a team that has just never been here before and isn't coming in the best of form.
Yeah, and that's how I was looking at NYCFC, and I'm sitting there going, okay, they should be able to take care of business in the first round. But yeah, for me, I keep drifting back to Saprissa and Leon as the two that and Olympia. You know, I'm looking at a couple of these, and I'm sitting there going, these could get dicey. But yeah, it's going to be fun Tuesday, Wednesday to see what's going to go down.
But no, this is what I'm telling you about Olympia. They're not the team that finished last season. They are 3-2-2 right now. They're not playing well. Motagua has reversed where they finished last season to now. They're in much better form. Olympia hasn't really. Olympia has had kind of a weird set of results. They're scoring goals. They're averaging a couple goals a game. They're conceding a little more than a goal a game. So they have a good goal differential, even though they're 3-2-2. So you look back at what they've done in the season, and their losses have come at Real España and home to Motagua. They drew at Real Sociedad, who's a mid-table. They also had another draw to mid-table. So they've struggled a little bit in bigger games right now. And I think Seattle's going to be a little fortunate also with the schedule that Olympia has. Because of those struggles, Olympia doesn't have as much margin for error. They're going to have to try to go for both. Olympia is not as concerning as they were when the draw happened. And that's why you've got to follow what happens after that. Because the draw, Olympia was the team that I did not want to see for Atlanta United because of how good they were playing at the time. Well, that's changed pretty quickly. Whereas Motagua was a team that it's like, okay, cool, this is manageable. And I still think it is, don't get me wrong. But they're playing much better than they were when the draw happened. And that's how this stuff goes. You know, Saprissa has kind of maintained where they were. Club Leon has too. And that's what's been a little impressive on their end is they had the postseason issue where they got knocked out after being the super leader in the Apertura, or second place. Sorry, they fell off just at the end. They were 9-3-6 in the Apertura. In the Clausura, they are 4-1-0, and they scored 13 goals in 5 matches. They've conceded 6. They've been so good here in the new season. They beat Monterrey 3-1 on the weekend. They beat Monarcas 2-1 on the road. They beat Pachuca 3-0. I mean, they're pounding some teams. Their loss was at Santos Laguna 3-2 going back to January 19th. Now, they play tonight. They're on the road at Atlético San Luis. Then they host LAFC on Tuesday. They host Necaxa on the weekend before they go to LAFC. And theirs moves around a little bit. Atlanta plays on the Tuesday and the Tuesday. LAFC and Leon is on the Tuesday in the first leg, but then the Thursday in the second leg. So there's more time in between. Leon does still have a game in between, but they're at home with Necaxa, who's in 6th place right now. And
Atlético San Luis, I think, is mid-table in Liga MX is 12th. Okay.
Yeah, so 1-1-3. Very, very balanced, even team in Atlético San Luis, who they're trying to become one of the bigger teams in Mexico, but it's a bit of a process.
Yeah, and so this one is it's going to be fun to get out the magnifying glass for all this stuff and keep track of what's going on with the context that you have broken down here in the first half hour here.
There's a lot going on with CONCACAF this year, and it is important. And it's very important for MLS teams to perform better. It's very important for them to, I think, control the narrative a little bit better here, because the narrative has kicked up in Mexico in a big, big, big way. And one of the reasons why is a lot of top talent is leaving the Mexican League and coming to MLS. So you're getting a lot of reaction out of Mexico about why that is. You're getting a lot of think pieces. You're getting a lot of folks saying, well, it's all about the money. Well, it's all about the quality of life. The soccer's not that good. It's just not that good. It's not really the case anymore. But that narrative doesn't go away until MLS teams start beating Mexican teams in official competition on a regular basis. Doesn't mean they have to always win, and any loss, forget it, then the whole story's blown. But they've got to start winning some games, and they've got to start winning some series. And it just doesn't happen enough. That's the thing that needs to change for MLS more than anything in 2020 is LAFC needs to come out strong against León. And I don't even know if the expectation is that LAFC has to win against León. But they have to perform well, and they have to be in it. And what I don't want to hear, and this is where I get really frustrated when these things happen, I don't want to hear an excuse. Everybody knows it's preseason for MLS teams right now, and they're having to jump straight into competitive play in CONCACAF. We all know that. I don't know if that's ever going to change. There's just not really a good spot in the schedule with the two leagues on different calendars. There's not a good spot in the schedule to move it. You're kind of stuck. You can't move the tournament back much further because Mexican playoffs would bump up against the final rounds of the Champions League. If you're going to have to pick who's going to be disadvantaged, you'd rather be disadvantaged in this way. If you're CONCACAF trying to find a compromise, this is not as much of a disadvantage as playing games during playoffs. MLS used to have teams, and CONCACAF used to have a group stage that was in the fall. Well, MLS pushed against that because they didn't want those games during the playoff race. Not even playoff matches, but the playoff race. So the group stage was eliminated to maximize the competition but limit the amount of games played in it, which is fine. This is the trade-off, though. And it is what it is. You have to find a way. And that's why the round of 16, outside of LAFC getting a tough draw, you've got matchups that are manageable. And would this match be different if Atlanta played Motagua in July? Yeah, it would. I think Atlanta would then be a much bigger favorite. Right now, yeah, there's some danger in it because you haven't played a competitive match yet. But that's why you structure a preseason to try to get ready for it in the best way possible. That's why you try to manage your market activity, bringing players in and getting them in as early as possible. Even that's not always the way you can make it happen in reality, but you try to. Everybody knows at this point. No more excuses about it. Teams have to go in and do it. I don't want to hear Bob Bradley or if it's Frank DeBoer or whoever the manager would be, I don't want to hear it's preseason. Anthony Hudson did that when they played Toronto in the round of 16 a few years ago. It was like, oh, yeah, this is preseason for us. No, it's a competitive match, and you need to treat it as such. You have to respect the competition. It has to be MLS teams going for this because they want to win the CONCACAF Champions League at all costs. Now, let's go to the next step in terms of the way MLS is structured and what can be done to help make that happen. And this has been a big part of the conversation around the new CBA. There is discussion about adding a U22 initiative to add more talented young players into the league. I think that's a very good step in the right direction. There is also the strong possibility, and I think it's almost inevitability, that you're going to have some kind of a limitation on the third designated player for teams in MLS. The Allocation Disorder podcast, Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejko, it's a little over 30 minutes that posted this morning. They talked about what they're hearing on this. It's pretty much a given that there's going to be a change to that rule, that third designated player, but exactly what it is not necessarily determined yet. It's going to be a limit about the age. You're going to have something about the being under the age of 23, but the amount of money that if it's not a player under 23, the amount of money that third designated player would be limited to is likely going to be more than the max TAM charge. So more than the max cap hit plus $1 million. You're probably going to be in the limitation of like $2 million or potentially even $3 million if the negotiations go in the way of the owners who want to spend more money. So it's not quite as catastrophic as it was originally portrayed. And I'm saying portrayed because the two teams that would be affected by this are LA Galaxy and Toronto. Nobody else in the league would be affected by this as of yet. LA Galaxy would not have been able to sign Chicharito, or they would not have been able to sign Pavón and bring him back in a designated player spot if this rule was in place now. Toronto would not have been able to sign Pablo Piatti, their designated player that they've added ahead of the season because of the age restriction. So 2 out of 26 teams would be affected. I don't like it, and I want to make that clear, but I do not think it is as catastrophic as some are trying to portray it, and I do not think it's an obvious sign that MLS has no interest in competing with Mexico. I think it's a battle between the owners who are still trying to limit spending and the owners who want to spend more, and that's that negotiation about the maximum amount that this third designated player could be if they're over the age of 23. That's where it's coming out. So I think the U22 initiative going alongside of it mitigates it to a degree. It helps. And I think the teams that are ambitious are going to take full advantage of that. Now, the details on that one are not finalized either, but it looks like it's going to go into effect for next year. The way it would work, there would be a limitation on the salary that the player would be able to get, and that would probably be that maximum budget charge. So around $600,000 plus is what you're looking at. But there would be an unlimited amount that you could spend on the transfer, and this is according to Tenorio and Stajkal from what they're hearing right now. Two players, for example, that would have fit into this are Jefferson Savarino, who was recently sold by Real Salt Lake, and Edward Atuesta. So players that are not designated players, could be actually very low designated players. Most likely, young TAM signings would go into this, and they would not count that maximum cap hit. They would not have to be used with TAM. They would be counting on your cap at $150,000 or $200,000. That's a huge opportunity, and when you combine the two stories here, you've got 24 of 26 teams that are not going to be affected by the other one. 2 teams would, and they would have to change their strategy a little bit, which I don't like. I do not like at all. I would rather have them have to pay a luxury tax of some sort, something like that, to where you are saying that if you're going to do this, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay the piper if you want to go out and sign 3 30-year-olds and pay them $10 million each. All right, you're going to have to pay the other teams that think that that's the wrong way to go. And if the overall group thinks that you need to have something like that, cool. I don't want a restriction. I want a luxury tax kind of thing, a penalty tax. I'd rather have that. Don't think it's going to happen. But with 24 of the 26 teams this year, with either not having 3 designated players or having one that is under that age threshold, I think it's not going to have as big of an effect as people think. And if so many teams are already signing these young players, whether it's on a TAM deal, whether they're counting as a designated player, what have you, and now they get 3 more spots with budget relief on these spots, it's a huge opportunity. And, I mean, Edward Atuesta was a best 11 player last year. Not every signing is Edward Atuesta. There's been plenty of signings that would fit into this and teams would go out and do and wouldn't pan out. But that's on scouting departments. Like, the rule is a good one. I like the U22 initiative a lot. And that was the first thing that jumped out to me about the CBA discussions was okay, this is a cool addition. I like this. This is a good thing for the league, and teams can really take advantage. I don't care if some clubs have bad scouting departments. That's on them. They have to get up to speed because this is a huge opportunity for them. If they don't, then they're going to fall behind. And if teams don't want to spend on 3 older designated players and they decide, you know what, we're not going to spend on that third one, or we're going to have somebody that you can buy down or whatever, take some of that money, put it over in a scouting department. It's a lot cheaper of an investment. But if you do it right, you can then go get essentially 3 TAM players in the old format, 3 starters that can put you over the top. It's a huge opportunity, and it's all about how you take advantage of it. But how the Galaxy, how Toronto deal with this is going to be really interesting because they're 2 teams that have not gone as all in on signing young players looking to sell them. They've been about signing big players to big contracts. And if they have to think about that third player not being a Pablo Piatti, who's a nice player, great experience, great CV coming to the table. But did anybody in Toronto have a Pablo Piatti poster on their wall? Probably not. Could you have went out and got a young winger instead of Pablo Piatti that could give you the same impact? I think you could. Now, you're going to have to scout it well, and you're going to have to pick the right one, obviously. But that's an easy tweak. Now, the Galaxy have always done things differently. They have been very bold in signing big names. You know who Chicharito is. I think if you follow the game to kind of the next level of depth, you have a pretty good idea of who Christian Pavón was. And if you don't, you know that he went to the World Cup. And that's easy. You understand that. So the Galaxy are the ones that have pushed the league forward in a different way, and they're the ones that are kind of being targeted by this potential rule change. And I want to see how they deal with it, because they have not always been a club that has done well with bringing in young players and developing young players. They're going to have to change their way of thinking a little bit. And like I said, I don't think that they should have to. If they want to spend their money in that way, I don't have a problem with it. If others do, don't make it a restriction. Make it a tax that goes in, and the teams that meet the requirements then get a little bit of extra allocation money. They get a little bit of extra cap relief because the Galaxy has to pay their penalty fee. I'm cool with that. I'd rather have that. But if that doesn't happen, and I'm not expecting it to, the Galaxy are the team to really look at, along with Toronto, as to how they manage this new opportunity, because I think it's a new opportunity.
Tafka had since you're on the CBA, Tafka had a CBA question for you this morning.
Okay.
Wants to know if there was any word on changes to the CBA regarding off-season time, total number of games, etc., things like that.
It hasn't been reported if there was, and I don't know how much the CBA defines that. Off-season time they do. I know that that's a big part of it. The number of games, I don't know if they have like a kind of a range, because I think some of that, or it definitely starts with the competition committee with the league. So I don't know if the players have agreed to, just 34 games, and if it's more than that, then you have to renegotiate, or if it's like they've agreed to 34 to 38 games and yada yada. That's the part I don't really know until and if it's ever truly, completely, and utterly public. So those things have not been talked about by anybody who has been covering the CBA. So I wouldn't expect any changes in those regards.
All right. You want to get into predictions, or what else is on your mind?
Sure. Let's go predictions for the final 10 of the first hour.
All right. Going back to the top of the order, Chris Ashley hopped in early, and I'm with him. This was one of the ones that I wrote down when it came to anticipating things for 2020. Chris says, I hope it's not my homerism coming through, but I truly believe at GVL Triumph will win the at USL League One regular season and return to the championship game.
That's a bold prediction. There's some other teams that are going to want to knock them off. There's one down in Statesboro that is preparing, I think, for a better second pro season. I think Darren Van Tassel has some pretty big ambitions in that regard. North Texas, I think, would be completely fine with just winning everything, regular season, postseason, all of it. It's a strong group, and they've got a lot of talent. It's going to be a fun League One season because now you're going to see how teams adjust. What did Tormenta learn last year? What did Red Wolves in Chattanooga learn last year? How do they approach Season 2 at this level? Because I remember coming in, a lot of people thought that all the USL League One teams would be very young. They would have guys who didn't have a ton of pro experience. And you saw a few teams go that way, but you saw a lot of teams go with 25, 26, 27, 28-year-old veterans who understand the grind of professional soccer and could be leaders in this league and in these teams. So you saw teams really take a varying approach to team building, and I think that'll continue. I think until League One kind of matures and gets to that 20 to 24 team league that I'm assuming they're shooting for in the next probably 5-6 years, you're going to see a lot of different approaches. And is John Harkes in Greenville, is that going to be the approach that gets them back competing for a championship? I think other teams are going to be geared up to knock them off, but Greenville's a team I think you have to look at as one of the favorites in League One for sure. No doubt.
With Tormenta getting off to that hot start and then injuries taking over and them ending up sixth in the table, you want to see what Chattanooga has with a new head coach and all of the turnover there and what his philosophy is as they finish just south of the playoff bar. Tormenta with all their additions and year 2 under Coach Millerese. Greenville, that they're going to be back in the discussion, or Texas will be in the discussion. I think that League One's going to be a hoot this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a competitive league. I think USL Championship will be a very competitive one too. NISA is the hard one to kind of look at and see what it's going to be because you've got teams that are kind of at a new level, and how do they build their teams? I think there's more questions about how teams are built in that third division league than in League One, and maybe it's just because we've seen one and the other one is really new at this level, but I think there's more questions about the overall competitive level of NISA, and they've opened the door up for more teams to come in. You can come in at a lower kind of bar to get in the door, which can be good and bad. Do you have teams that can stick around? Because we've already seen, one team not make it to Game 1 in Philadelphia, and a team here in Atlanta that is not on the schedule for this season and hasn't said anything since their last game. So I think there's some reports out there that they might go back into NPSL, but haven't seen anything confirmed by anybody. When you have a lower bar to get in, you get instability. And can the league grow like the NPSL did, where you had some instability, but because it was easy for people to get in, it also gave clubs a chance to grow, like in Asheville City, where they've grown into a bigger club than they were when they started. Can NISA be that at the pro level? I think that's what they're trying to be. And can they find the balance to have high enough standards to limit instability and provide quality and competition, but a low enough bar for ownership groups to get in the door and grow into something bigger? And we'll have to see. All of this, though, with League One, with Championship, with NISA, with the growth at the amateur level below that, it's a dramatically different situation than it was a decade ago. I mean, incredibly different situation, and all that is so, so exciting. So I hope that all of them have big years, and I hope that there's a lot of great stories to talk about with all of these teams.
Along those same lines, Josh Airy had a question. He said, do you ever see USL possibly having a version of ProRel around 2026? I wouldn't expect MLS to be integrated, but I think it has possibilities at that lower/intermediate level.
Yeah, they've talked about it. They've actually been pretty strong in talking about it. between USL Championship and USL League One because it's not a dramatic difference in budgets. You can take a USL League One budget into USL Championship and be competitive. You can drop a USL Championship budget into USL League One and not dominate everybody. There's a few teams that would, but they're probably not going to get relegated. So I think the pathway to this is Jake Edwards, the president of USL, has talked about starting basically a League Cup first, where you would have championship teams and League One teams in a cup competition. So then you kind of start to see, like, how close are the League One teams? Because it's hard to compare. I mean, we've seen, I want to say, a couple of Open Cup matches last time. Maybe? Not many. So League One needs to mature a little bit, get to 16 teams or so, start the League Cup, and then 2026, yeah, that's a good target date to have some form of a promotion relegation between those two. The budget difference between MLS and USL Championship beyond the business side, which would prevent this from happening unless there is a merger between the two separate businesses. The budget difference between a top USL Championship team and an MLS team, it's so huge. I don't think the game is ready for that yet. When the second division grows a lot further than where it is, and I'm not talking one or two teams that are at a top level in the championship, I'm talking about the top half of the league being teams that are on close to MLS budgets, at least the bottom half of MLS budgets. Then you could actually have a conversation about it. Again, throwing the separate businesses and all of that side of it out. Right now, it's just too big of a gap. It's just too big of a gap between the level, between the budgets, between the sustainability numbers, between Championship and League One. No, that's manageable. And that's something I think they can work to implement and find a system that works for USL and could provide a template down the road, far down the road, but could work to provide a template. But there's a lot of things that have to happen between now and then. Let's hold it there. Let's take a quick break. We're going to reset for hour number 2. So we need your predictions for 2020. Who's going to win things? Who's going to be a golden boot? Who's going to have a breakout season? If you're talking about the men's national team, how are they going to do in Nations League? How are they going to do in the first sets of World Cup qualifiers? If you're talking the women's national team, how are they going to do in the Olympics? What's the roster going to look like for the Olympics? There's so many things that are on the table for 2020. Tell us what you think is going to happen across all of it. We're going to take a quick break. Tweet at us at SoccerDownHere. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, February 14th. Predictions for 2020, because this is the last week without competitive soccer as we start 2020 in the world of the United States soccer universe. I'm just making that up. It's just whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of things happening. There is the Champions League and CONCACAF getting underway next week, and Atlanta United will be part of that on Tuesday. Don't forget, tomorrow we would love to see y'all at Wild Heaven Brewing at West End. They have a special beer for this Champions League series with Atlanta and Motagua. It is a Hefeweizen with Honduran fruit. And they went to some lengths to find this Honduran fruit and make the beer specifically for this. It's pretty cool. So you'll be able to have that tomorrow, hang out with us, talk soccer, hang out with a bunch of other fans and talk soccer. All the supporters groups officially recognized by Atlanta United will be there. Terminus Legion, Faction, Footy Mob, Resurgence. We're going to have a round table and talk about the upcoming season with them, talk about building soccer culture and challenges and good things and positive things and negative things. We're going to talk about all of that tomorrow. Kelly Francis will be joining us. She'll be helping us out with the round table and also getting her thoughts on the upcoming season as well. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Wild Heaven, West End. It's going to be a lot of fun. And bring your used soccer balls, cones, pennies. If you're a coach and you've upgraded your gear, bring that stuff because we're raising equipment for a program, middle school program in Clayton County in Rex, Georgia, that has never had a soccer program. And they've been bitten by the soccer bug, the Atlanta United bug, and they want a program because the kids are requesting a soccer program. The kids want to play soccer at the school. And it's a school that, doesn't have the budget to add more equipment. So we're going to try to help them out and get them started with a starter kit. So use soccer balls, cones, pennies. That's what we're looking for tomorrow. Bring them. We'll get them to the school. We'll help get that program started. It'll be a very cool thing if you guys can help us out with that. Predictions for 2020. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Let us know what you're thinking is going to happen in the upcoming year. A couple bits of news before we jump into them. Rodolfo Pizarro. Looks like this announcement is going to come sometime today. I guess maybe over the weekend. It's all finalizing contract situation and such. But you're getting a lot of comments being made right now. We've talked about the back and forth about the transfer fee. In Mexico, it's being reported as $20 million. Paul Tenorio is reported at around $12 million. Nico Cantor of TUDN was talking with Paul McDonough this morning. Ask Paul McDonough if Pizarro is going to be the most expensive signing in MLS history. Cantor tweeted, he paused, smiled, and said no. Smirked and doubled down, no. So that would throw the $20 million number out if Paul McDonough is telling the truth here, and it's been reported both ways, so who knows. Tom Marshall at Mexico World Cup brought this one to the table, and this started to make the rounds in Mexico late yesterday. So remember, we talked about Rodolfo Pizarro mentioning David Beckham reaching out to him and talking about, coming to Miami, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he's under contract to a different team, so unless that was allowed by Monterrey, that's kind of against FIFA rules and stuff. It's not good. So Monterrey reportedly is not happy about this and probably will make a complaint. I don't think anything else happens with it. There's been a few folks in Mexico saying that this could stop the deal. It could place the transfer in jeopardy. No, there's too much money on the table, but Does it potentially create a problem? Yes. And does this happen in plenty of other scenarios? Yes. But do the players talk about it before the transfer is done and while things are getting done? No. So Pizarro's representation might want to have a word and say, hey, watch what you're saying before we get this deal done. Don't put that out there. We'll see. Columbus is looking like they're going to enter the 2020 season without a kit sponsor. No bueno. No bueno at all. Look, our friend Anthony Precourt, that everybody in Columbus loves and thinks is a complete and total liar about everything, he said it was a tough market for business. They don't have a kit sponsor. Was he wrong? Columbus has got to figure something out about it because it's a bad look. It was a bad look for San Jose last year. It's a bad look when every other team in the league has a kit sponsor. 5-6 teams have a sleeve sponsor now, and you don't have anything? You got to figure something out. And you don't want to undervalue your kit sponsorship, but it looks better to have something on there at some price rather than nothing. And something would actually cover up the horrible design of that kit as well, which would be a good thing because I'm still trying to find a sailboat. If they got something, a logo in there, maybe I'm not trying to find a sailboat when I see the Crew play. So that'd be a good deal. New York City is seeing some positivity on the ticket side of things. And this is from a really good piece by Sam Stejkol at The Athletic with Brad Sims, the CEO of the club. The quote is, Sims doesn't anticipate that trend about tickets declining. He doesn't anticipate that trend to continue in 2020. Quote, the team is pleased with its season ticket renewal rate and anticipates an overall attendance boost through hosting more games on weekends than it did in 2019, when 8 of its 17 regular season home matches were played on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. That's why there's 4 games at Citi Field. Rather than having 4 more midweek games because of Yankee scheduling, they moved them to Citi Field. Not the most ideal of situations, but 8 of 17 being midweek and still averaging 21,000 plus is impressive. It's far more impressive when you know that there were 8 midweek games. I didn't know there were that many. And you look at their attendance that declined, well, midweek games are going to be a lower attendance. They are worldwide. I mean, it's not just an MLS thing, but yeah, 8 of 17, that's a lot.
You know, when half of your schedule is a difficult time to navigate traffic in New York City, get your way to the Bronx, and watch something at Yankee Stadium. Although, I mean, I want to see what, and this might be somewhat apples to oranges here, in the NYCFC attendance for cocktail, but I want to see what the transition is going from the Bronx to Queens. I want to see if those numbers are going to match up to what Sims was looking for and whatever their target is, because weekend versus weekday. But yeah, it was brutal, but yeah, I didn't know that 8 of 17 were midweek either. And so it makes more sense as to why you had that 20 to 25% drop over the last handful of years.
Well, no, the last handful of years isn't 1 year of 8. So let's just compare 1 year to 1 year. The overall drop, yes, Yankee Stadium is a bad atmosphere for soccer. You don't have great sight lines. It's not ideal. And that's been part of it. Frustration about not having news on a stadium, although that's changing. That's been part of it. But from 2018 to 19, yes, you had more midweek games than you've ever had. So that factored into that drop. But you can't say that it factors into the drop from 2015 to 2019 because it's just 1 year. So let's see what this year with fewer midweek games, if it holds or goes up, because you do have the move to Citi Field for 4 games. So we'll see where those numbers fall, but it's looking better in the NYC ticket office these days. A couple of rumors before we get into predictions. This is from Agustin Celeo, who covers Vélez Sarsfield in Argentina. Chicago Fire have agreed to terms on a deal to bring in Gaston Jimenez on a designated player contract. He's a defensive midfielder at Vélez, 28 years old, would join Chicago at the end of the Superliga season. The final round of Superliga matches is the first weekend in March. So he would join Chicago later in March. Don't know if he would be in place ahead of the Atlanta United trip to Soldier Field on March 21st. Reportedly, it'd be a $4.3 million transfer fee. There had been reports about Jimenez in Chicago going back to January. It's a really good signing. Not ideal that you don't get him to start your season, but it's a really good signing and a manageable number. I mean, spending this kind of money on a designated player who's a defensive midfielder is an interesting strategy for Chicago, and we'll see if it pays off, but it's a good addition to the squad. You're just not going to have him day one. Orlando City is linked to a Spanish midfielder, Alvaro Garcia, and this is coming from Diario AS in Spain. Targeting 27-year-old Garcia, who plays for Rayo Vallecano in the second division. He's in the midst of a 5-year deal, signed it in 2018, and he was the most expensive signing in Vallecano's club history. He hasn't been a consistent starter. That's why you're starting to get this speculation. The problem is, lately, Vallecano has sold some other players. They don't have a lot of depth right now, so they might not be able to do this right now. They might have to hold on to him until the summer before they could replace him. But keep an eye on Orlando adding Alvaro Garcia from Rayo Vallecano in Spain. Let's get into predictions. What do we have on the Twitters?
We have plenty of predictions. We also have folks with comments that have no predictions. We'll get into those after predictions. How about that?
Okay.
JB United has a prediction against his better judgment in 2020. Atlanta 2, LAFC 3 in MLS Cup.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And on a hashtag Freestyle Friday, he had a follow-up comment. He says, we always hear about transfer fees increasing based on performance benchmarks. What does that really mean? And when does the increased fee get paid to the original team?
Okay. The prediction, LAFC is a favorite to win MLS Cup this year. I don't think they're the only favorite. I don't think they're the most clear favorite, but they're a favorite. So if they win MLS Cup and it's LAFC over Atlanta, that's not going out on a crazy limb. I know there's, you'd love to see it the other way if you're an Atlanta United fan, but no, that's not a crazy prediction at all. The benchmarks and stuff on a transfer, it varies deal to deal. You saw the Darlington Nagbe one when he came to Atlanta, had some really high bars for money going to Portland. I think if Nagbe was a league MVP, that triggered some money. If he scored a certain number of goals, that triggered some money. I think if he was in the best 11, that triggered some money. It just depends, and it depends on how it's negotiated. Sometimes it's down to appearances. Sometimes it's down to goals and assists. Sometimes it's down, I've seen some deals worldwide to how many appearances, not even just starts. So it's all over the place. There's no easy way to explain it because every deal is so different. So like the Gressel one to DC, if he hits certain benchmarks, and we don't know what they are, Atlanta would get more money. They've been described as soft, so you would expect that it's either appearances or a low number of goals plus assists, something like that. So every deal's different, so there's just no way to really define it for a consistent thing across the board.
Katie Weaver has two sets of predictions. Set number one, her hopeful 2020, Atlanta United wins MLS Cup. Hashtag COYS wins the FA Cup. Come on, you Spurs. Hashtag USWNT win Olympic gold. Hashtag USMNT. And she has ellipses and a question mark. That's her first round for the Freestyle Friday.
Okay, so I think the most likely of those four, I think we might actually have some answers about the men's national team by the end of the year as to what World Cup qualification will look like. So I have a little more than ellipses and a question mark. I think the most likely of those is probably the women winning the Olympics. And that's not a guarantee by any stretch, but I think the smaller rosters should help the U.S. Because it's going to take away some of the options for other teams. And I think some other teams with lesser talent, yeah, you're not going to be taking some other players, but you're not going to have as much versatility. You've got players you can take for the U.S. who can play 4 or 5 different spots. And you don't have that in some other teams in the world. So if there's an injury, if somebody has a bad couple of matches and you need to replace them, you might not be able to. I think the U.S. will have far more flexibility in moving pieces around at a higher level of talent. So I'll go most likely out of Katie's. I'll go most likely as the women win in the Olympics.
Katie's round number 2. Some other random MLS 2020 predictions. Neither Joseph nor Vela wins Golden Boot. Seattle disappoints. KC bounces back with Open Cup or a Western final appearance. Of Assad and Gressel, Yamil has a better season. Hashtag Freestyle Friday.
Okay, let's go one by one. I could easily see somebody other than Joseph or Vela winning Golden Boot. I think Alan Pulido will be in that conversation. I think Chicharito will be in that conversation. I think Gyasi Zardes could be in that conversation. I know, shock. People are going to freak out, but I think Columbus is going to be really good. I think Zardes is going to benefit from that. What was the second one?
Seattle disappoints.
I could see that. There's so many questions about the Sounders right now and what their team is going to look like. They do really well in the summer transfer window, so they might disappoint in the first half and fix it, but they also might run out of that luck and not be able to fix it in the summer. I could absolutely see that, but I'm in more wait-and-see mode on the Sounders than predicting they're going to disappoint yet.
And then Sporting bounces back with either U.S. Open Cup or a Western Conference final.
Yeah, I completely agree with that being a strong prediction. I think Sporting Kansas City will be a title contender this year.
Of Assad and Gressel, Yamil has a better year.
Yes, because I think his role is a little more defined. I don't know where Gressel's going to play in D.C. I don't know how they're going to set their team up. And my guess is that they don't play a 3-5-2, is that they play some version of a 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, and Gressel's playing either as a central midfielder or as a right winger where he's not as effective. He's most effective as a wingback, and I don't see DC playing a system consistently to give him time there. And I don't know what they do with Paul Arriola, and I don't know what all of it means. I still don't know how they fit the puzzle pieces together for DC. Assad is a little easier to predict as being, in a left wing kind of role, and I just think his role's better defined.
Percy Herrera apparently is having a question of himself this morning, whether or not to listen to Justin Bieber's new album or us. Hopefully it's the latter.
Do you know who Justin Bieber is?
Yeah. I try not to listen to his music.
Not a very strong yeah.
I do. I know who he is. I've just never been impressed with his music or... I will say this, though. Kate McKinnon's impression of Justin Bieber is right on Saturday Night Live. Tremendous work by her.
Okay.
Tafka has some 2020 prediction. Atlanta United breaks its own record for an outgoing transfer. Barco to La Liga for $32 million. The U.S. men's national team...
I don't know if it's La Liga, but yes, I think when Barco is transferred, they will break that record, yes.
Okay. Men's national team fields Gio, Pulisic, Yanez, Adams, and Sargent at least once, all at the same time, and it will be glorious.
They got to all stay healthy. And I don't know if it'll be glorious. That's one thing that I would be excited about it. I'd like to see it in a friendly first, and they've all got to stay healthy to do it. But I don't know if it'll be glorious. I'm trying to think of how that would all fit, and that's the other challenge. And this is what can happen with a national team. It happens at a club team plenty of times. You could have a bunch of talented players, but how do you fit them together? And I don't know how that group necessarily fits together. So go through it one more time. Adams, we know he could play in the holding midfielder at right back.
Sargent.
Up top, and he's got to play better. Look, he hasn't been good for Werder Bremen. So
Nope.
it goes down to the whole thing about guys have to be performing at the club level, and Sargent shouldn't have an automatic spot with the national team. He's not playing well at the club level. If Jossie's Artist is playing better, he needs to play.
Yanez.
I like Yanez a lot. Really good 1v1 winger, and I'm glad he's part of the mix.
Pulisic.
Where do they play him? That's what I want to know. Like, where does he settle in? Is he going to be a 10? Is he going to be out wide? Is he going to be a second forward? What is he best at? And I'm not sure if Chelsea has necessarily figured that out, and I don't know if Berhalter's figured that out. I don't know if Pulisic's figured that out. I think the positioning of him is going to be the big question in 2020.
And Gio.
It's a big jump, but he's playing really well, and right now he's earned that opportunity. So, I hope he gets it. For me, it's all about form. If you're playing at a senior club, if you're not playing for the reserves, not playing for their U23s, if you're playing first team minutes and you're performing, I don't care how old you are, play. If you're the best player in that position. So Gio has jumped up into this conversation really, really fast. But how do you get the best of Gio and Pulisic on the field together, along with a Weston McKennie and others? How do you fit the puzzle pieces? And that can be the most challenging aspect of being a national team manager, because you don't get to see these guys on a regular basis. You are having to take some guesses a little bit at times as to how the puzzle pieces fit together. So you'd like to get the two of them into camp in March and take a look at how they play together and where they fit together to prepare for CONCACAF Nations League semifinals in June. And then you can make the decision, can they play together? I think they can. I would probably lean to Reyna playing behind Pulisic, or Pulisic playing out wide, but he's not a traditional winger, so you got to think about how that factors into the team. Could you get a situation with your best forward up top, whether it's Josie Altidore, Josh Sargent, Jossie's Artist, whoever, Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, maybe. Yeah, it gets really tricky. Because
Sasha added Weah to the discussion as well.
Well, and whose spot is Weah going to take? Because you can't play all those guys together. It's impossible. Because Yanez is a winger. Up top, you could play Weah, but you can't play Weah and Sargent and Pulisic and Gio Reyna together. It's going to be really difficult to play two up top and two second forward / number 10s behind and have balance, because then you don't have wingers. You're going to have two defensive midfielders sitting behind and play a 4-4-2 box, 4-2-2-2. And you don't have wingers, so there's no spot for Yanez. Adams could be one of the guys in behind. If you're going to have to pick, I think right now Weah would maybe be the odd man looking, from the outside, or Sargent would be, and Weah would play up top, but there's always been a reluctance to play Weah as a number 9, which I don't necessarily get. I'd like to see him there. You've got a lot of talented players coming through, and some of them are in the same spots. So some of them are not going to be able to play together. And that's something that you have to get ready for and used to, and that's why Greg Berhalter's getting paid the big bucks. He's got to make the decisions on the right group. And it's not easy to do when you have a wealth of possibilities in the same spots on the field.
And all of this discussion has led to a question from Tafka.
Okay.
There seems to be a hesitancy or questioning to include senior team players into the Olympic squad, Pulisic, Adams, etc. Why? I know there's an age restriction, but why keep out the most talented youth out of a major competition we haven't qualified for in over a decade?
Because you probably won't have the decision about keeping them out. Their clubs will keep them out. Because the Olympics, you're not required to release guys. Period. For the Olympics, the tournament, the Olympic tournament, if you qualify, you're not required to release guys. You're not required to release guys for the qualifying tournament. So is Chelsea going to let Christian Pulisic go to something that they don't have to let him go to? Probably not. And that's why. That's exactly why. Then with the Olympics themselves, if you qualify, I go back to 2008, and Lionel Messi wanted to play for Argentina. Barcelona did not want to let him go. And this is when Rijkaard was leaving and Pep Guardiola was coming in. Pep Guardiola used it as a kind of a political move to build favor with Messi, to say that, I know you want to do this. I'm going to back you. One, you better go win the freaking thing. But I'm going to back you. But, you know, you're going to have to support me in what I'm doing with this group as well. And that kind of started the relationship with the two of them. Because Barcelona didn't want to let him go. And Messi was ready to, I mean, I think there were threats of lawsuits at one point. Is Pulisic going to take that fight on with Chelsea where he's not a guaranteed starter? Probably not. I don't think he's going to want to anger the manager. Some other clubs are going to refuse call-ups. It's going to happen. So it's not about a reluctance from U.S. Soccer to take these guys. It's a bunch of them probably aren't going to be available.
Josh Airy back in this morning with the USL Championship thoughts.
Okay.
First off, he says that the at San Diego Loyal will squeeze into the playoffs in the USL Western Conference.
They've built a good team, and their kits are really nice too. So it's really hard to make predictions like that in USL Championship, but that's not a crazy one. They've built a really good squad. We'll see how Landon Donovan manages it, because this is his first time as a manager, and we'll see how that group comes together, because you've got some young, some old, a mix of guys. There's a lot of talent there, though.
He says he really likes Zizou and Metcalf and a possibility that Landon might get laced up himself. And he also says,
no,
Josh,
don't do that.
Josh also says Atlanta United 2 will squeeze into the bottom spot in the Eastern Conference.
I think that's the goal. I think to get into the playoffs is a huge goal for Atlanta United 2. And it's not about doing that at the expense of developing players, but it's about having a strong enough project that you get there. And that's what you need to get that next step for Atlanta United too. I think it helps your development. There's always a balance between development and winning. And I know this conversation gets generalized around American soccer a lot. At the youngest ages, I mean, if we want to take a flow chart here very quickly, the youngest ages, I could care less about competition. If you have the best U10 team in the state, whoopity-doo. Like, seriously, that's...
Well, Lottie frickin' God!
Exactly.
Very nice.
U10 team in the state. Good for you. By the time those guys get to 12, they might have grown a foot. They might be playing baseball. It means nothing. When you get to 11v11 and you get to like U13, even some U12, okay, competition can be a little more important, but still not the number one thing. It's still about individual development. It's still about, creating the club philosophy and implementing it. It's not about winning games at all costs. You get to 16 where you see players start to get opportunities either at a USL Championship level or 16-year-old signing to MLS. Okay. Those teams need to learn how to win and need to learn, like, yes, we play a certain way. We try to build out of the back. We play a 3-4-3 or we play a 4-3-3. We play in this manner. It's the 75th minute. We're getting shellacked, but we're holding on to a 2-1 lead. Bunker down and get out of here with a result. That's a different conversation. You don't do that at 10-year-olds. You do that at 16 is when you start to introduce it. As they get older, then you have to find the balance. But even for Atlanta United too, the goal for that team is not to win the USL Championship trophy. The goal is to send players to the first team and have them ready to contribute day one. And that goal has been met in quite a few circumstances. George Campbell could be the next one. Miles Robinson is a prime example. It's it's about the individual development for the first team in the Atlanta United 2 situation. Now, one way and one factor in development is creating a culture of winning. And when you have a team that is struggling to get results and struggling to get wins and is not even in a playoff chase, games are not as meaningful and you're not getting as much out of them. So Atlanta United 2 taking that next step, keeping their developmental philosophy and focus, but building a strong enough group that can push into the playoffs, that's the next step for that project.
Shiva, my prediction, LAFC wins the West and Supporter Shield. Atlanta wins the East.
I think
Open Cup winner.
Atlanta winning the East is more likely than LAFC winning the West. I do. I might be crazy. I think Sporting is really going to push. I think Portland is really going to push. And I think LAFC is going to have some challenges this year that they haven't had before. I think Diego Rossi is probably going to go in the summer. They're going to have to deal with that. I still don't know exactly how they're going to fit Rossi, Brian Rodriguez, Vela, and a forward into the team because that's how they play their best. I don't know how they're going to manage now Atuesta, Blessing, Cifuentes, Janela, Mark Anthony Kay. 2 guys out of that group are going to play. Are guys going to get frustrated? Are you going to be able to manage it? And defensively, how do you replace Walker Zimmerman? So right now, I think Atlanta's a better odds to win the East than LAFC has to win the West. I would. I want to pick Portland, but last year really gave me pause in kind of where things are with Portland, so I want to wait. If I had to pick somebody right now, man, it's really hard to go against Sporting Kansas City. I think if they're healthy, they have one of the most complete rosters in the league. But they got to stay healthy. But they have increased their depth in places where they did have injury problems last year. They've got decisions to make and what their lineup looks like, but I think they're the most complete group right now.
Open Cup winners, the Crew.
Could happen. The Open Cup's a crapshoot. I think Columbus will be competitive for trophies this year for sure.
And Shiva says, no way I can predict MLS Cup before the summer window. Oh, and by the way, is there a Campeones Cup this year?
Yeah. It's Seattle and the winner of the Campeón de Campeones match.
So there's your answer for that, Shiva.
Yeah.
Daniel has mucho predictions.
Okay. We'll kind of piece through them one at a time.
Yeah, because he had a prediction, then he'd come in with more, then he'd come in with more. And he spells more. He spells more today, M-O-H-R.
M-O-H.
First set of predictions from Daniel.
Okay.
Atlanta United's the first CONCACAF champion of MLS, qualified for the Club World Cup.
I'd love it. I don't know if I can make that prediction just yet, but step by step, I'd love to see that.
After a grueling set of matches to make it to the top, trouncing Club America, LAFC, they stand victorious.
I don't know if LAFC's at that point. I don't know if LAFC gets past Leon.
Lieutenant Dave says that it'd be fantastic to see a pro rel league in the U.S. I don't think that's going to be in 2020, though.
No. And I don't, honestly, like, the romanticism of pro rel is great. It paints a wonderful picture. The reality of it isn't always so pretty. That paint flakes off and falls on the floor and gets washed away, and there might be lead in it that makes you sick. I'm not a huge fan of some of the negatives of it, and I think you have to consider the negatives when you do look at the positives, which are great for competition. It's great for storylines. There's some great things that come out of it. Right now, the gap between MLS and USL Championship in terms of money and in terms of teams being able to jump up or move down and maintain sustainability, I don't like them right now. The second division's not strong enough. If and when that happens, then I think you can talk about how it could actually work, even beyond. I'm not even getting into the business side of it, which is the number one barrier to this. MLS is a business. USL Championship is a business. They are not the same business. And that would have to be rectified in some form or fashion before you could have any kind of promotion relegation. So that would be the biggest barrier. And I think if it ever happened, it would all happen under one umbrella, and most likely MLS. There's a thing that I think a lot of people have about being anti-MLS because it's not it's not the NASL, it's not the USL, it's single entity, it's all the things that people want to point at it. I'll go ahead and say something that is controversial, I guess. MLS is the best thing that's happened in American soccer ever. It's the longest running nationwide first division league done on a big scale. You have more soccer fans, more kids following the game, more everything because of the growth of MLS. That doesn't make it perfect, but it's been good for American soccer, not bad. And I think some people look at it as a bad thing for American soccer. Can it be better? Yes, it can, just like everything. But to say that it's been bad, you weren't there watching the first division in 1995 when, one, you couldn't watch it unless you had Prime Network or were in the stadiums, which were high school stadiums or who knows what kind of facilities in some places. And, oh yeah, there were only 6 teams. It's a little different these days. You can watch any game in the league on a weekend you want. Yeah, you might have to make sure you have Spanish language TV. But you can watch any game you want. You can listen to games on the radio. You didn't have radio broadcasts in 1995. You didn't have media outlets like The Athletic pumping money into it. You didn't have local newspapers really covering it. Atlanta did. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution did. They covered the ruckus at that time. Not everybody else did in other markets. I think Seattle actually did okay with the Sounders at that time. I think Montreal did okay in the early days of the Impact. But you had teams falling apart months before the season started. I mean, it was a wild, wild west, and the bad time in the wild, wild west where everything was crumbling and falling apart, and you had disease everywhere. MLS has changed that, and that's a good thing. Can you get to a promotion relegation situation where you have enough first and second division teams that are healthy, that are sustainable, that can move up and down based purely on competitive merit? I would love to see it. I don't know how close we are to it. I think the first steps are USL Championship because they have 2 divisions under their umbrella that are not as widely separate in terms of business, in terms of money. And in terms of level, I think there is a difference between the bottom of USL Championship and the top of League One, but it's not as big of a gap as it is at other levels in American soccer. So I would love to see USL Championship experiment with this, find a format that works, whether it is like we see in some leagues in Europe where it is single season, you have a bad year, bye, you get relegated. Or if it's like Mexico or Argentina where it's done over a 3-year period, where you've got to be bad for a sustained period of time to get relegated. And don't have what Mexico does where teams get relegated and the owners just buy another team and keep their brand in the first division, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So yes. I hope that one day there is a format that works and promotes sustainability and promotes the competitive good elements of promotion relegation, but it has to protect against the bad things of teams getting relegated, disappearing. You don't have the TV money to have a parachute payment to protect teams like England does, and most leagues around the world don't have that either. Teams that get relegated sometimes can go away in a few years or become a completely different business if they survive. That's not good. That's not good for the game. The American soccer is not there yet to where it can weather teams going away on a regular basis when they're high profile. It's not good when any team goes away, but it's very different if an NPSL team goes away in a market versus an MLS team goes away in a market. The effects on the game in that market are much more severe if it is a higher profile team. And I don't know if American soccer is quite ready for that yet. We've got 25 years under our belt with a league that isn't at risk of going away the next year, and with half the teams at risk of being able to pay players the next year, and half the teams that are playing in professional venues. It's still young, even though it's come a long way. So I hope that it continues, and I hope that we get there someday. But no, it's not going to be 2020. I hope USL actually takes the flag here and creates something with League One and Championship to show that it can work and it can build. And we need to see it, because last time USL had a promotion, they didn't have a relegation side of it at that time either. They just had the promotion side in 97, 98, 99. I think it was between 98 and 99, because 97 is when they merged with the A-League. You had a team come up from their, it would have been the third division, it was the second division of USL, into the A-League, and they won one game over 2 years in two different cities and were out of business. That's not good. So I think the game is much more mature now, but that's the things that you worry about. So I hope USL can find a way to start to work through that.
And a quick soccer over there note, considering we've been discussing this gentleman this morning. Frank Lampard said that Christian Pulisic will not be fit for Chelsea and Manchester United on Monday.
Pulisic's had a bunch of injuries. Tyler Adams has had a bunch of injuries. Man, bad luck with top U.S. young players getting injured. Miles Robinson. Eesh.
That's the word to use. Chris Hutchison this morning, his 2020 prediction is the USMNT will continue to make us all thankful that we have the USWNT.
That is a safe prediction, sadly. I hope that we're feeling better about the men's national team by the end of 2020. I hope that it's a more positive year. You have the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals, and look, this to me is very sad to see that this is where CONCACAF's going to go with it. It's not U.S. Soccer booking it this way. Understand it. CONCACAF runs the Nations League. So Stephen Goff posted it on Twitter, and he got it from Glenn Davis in Houston. There's no word yet on the venues for the Nations League semifinals, but one proposal would have both semifinals in Houston on the same day. U.S.-Honduras would be at BBVA, the Dynamo Stadium. Mexico-Costa Rica would be at the Houston Texans NFL venue. That's kind of sad. That makes me sad that they would feel like, you know what, we don't even want you to be in a doubleheader at the NFL venue. We're just going to put you over here across town. That sucks. But that's where the national team is as a draw right now. It's probably the smart business move. So that's got to change, and the soccer's got to be better for that to change, and it's going to take time, and you're going to have people who, when it starts to change, won't be paying attention and will be doing the angry yelling thing about the national team, even when it's getting better, because that's what happens when you lose the trust of the fan base. I hope that it does start to get better, and I hope that the Nations League semifinal is a win, and you get to a final with Mexico, and it would be an upset if you win. But the level of the performance is something you can compare under Greg Berhalter in friendlies and in Gold Cup. Are you more competitive with Mexico, who is the standard bearer in CONCACAF? You got to get to the final first to play Mexico, but that's one benchmark this year. It's got to be better. The World Cup qualifiers that get started later in the year, you got to get started strong. You can't have a start like you did last time around. You cannot lose your first two games. It creates a hole that only one team has gotten out of in the history of the Hex. You don't want to have to beat team number 2 because you couldn't do it last time. You don't want to have to try to take that road again. Stay on the easier path, and hopefully they manage those early qualifiers better. And hopefully when we do this going into 21, there's at least a more hopeful outlook of the men's national team not being such a drain on happiness in America.
Patrick Delaney this morning, he says, Nostra Patrick foresees Barco being sold in the summer, leaving more room for Petit to flourish. #ATLUTD.
I'm not as strong on that one. I think that it will happen in the winter. And I wonder if the Olympics could be the mark that makes it more difficult for teams to commit to a big transfer knowing that he won't be joining them until after the Olympics. Because I think he will be part of the Olympic squad for Argentina, and I think Atlanta would let him go to that. And I think if a new team is going to bring him in, I don't know if he would go if he doesn't get that opportunity. I think he would take that very seriously, and it's a huge opportunity. I think he should take it very seriously and should be part of that group. That'd be a huge thing for him in his career. So is that going to limit the market for him in the summer? I think it could. And I think he's more likely to go after the season than in the summer.
Daniel Price, part of his more in all capital letters predictions. 4 players from Atlanta United called up to the USMNT: Miles, Brad Gazan, George Campbell, George Bello, Emerson Heineman.
Whoa. George Campbell, that's a huge jump. I don't know if that one's realistic.
2 for Argentina, Barco and Pitti, and 1 for Venezuela, being Joseph.
Yeah. The U.S. men's one, Campbell, I'm not putting that kind of expectation on him or prediction on him. I think Campbell will be a guy who might play 10 matches in MLS. That's kind of the over-under for him, for me. And I would have easily said under before. I might say push or slightly over now. And it's because of how good of a preseason he's had. But more than that, I think might be too big of an ask. So slow down on Campbell. I think he's still got a lot of room to grow, but he's in a far different place today than he was when he was signed in terms of 2020 expectation.
Ricky Ricardo says that his MLS Cup champ is LAFC, and the furthest CCL run goes to both Atlanta and Seattle, who make the semis.
I'm not confident about Seattle making the semis. I just don't know what they're going to look like defensively. I would go Atlanta and New York City as the 2 that I have the most confidence in.
He also gives his playoff predictions for MLS. In the East, you want me to go 7-1 or 1-7?
1-7.
Toronto, number 1. Atlanta.
Oh, you said Toronto like it's a big surprise.
I'd have Toronto as part of that gaggle up top.
So why is it a big surprise?
Number 1?
If it's a gaggle at the top, why is it a big surprise that they would be at the top? I don't understand your surprise.
For me, I'm looking at the Michael Bradley injury and how they're going to adjust for that. I think that they may start out slower than everybody else because of that.
That's what I was looking for. That's why I was asking.
Toronto 1, Atlanta 2. Columbus 3, NYCFC 4, New England, DC 5-6, and he can't pick between Montreal and Orlando at 7.
I don't know if Columbus gets ahead of New York City. The question is the new manager, but I really like New York City's group. I really do. And I think if I had to pick one right now, Atlanta and New York are both dealing with CONCACAF early, which could affect league play. Toronto is not, but Toronto's dealing with Michael Bradley's absence early, which could affect league play. Columbus and New England are not having those effects. I think New York City is a stronger team than Columbus. It's not crazy to think Columbus could finish higher than them. I don't know. I don't know if I could actually predict it though. I would have them 4. I'd have New York City, Atlanta, Toronto, and I might go in that order right now. New York City, Atlanta, Toronto in terms of it. And one reason is I think Atlanta will take the Open Cup more seriously than New York City. And that's just another kind of drain a little bit on your season. I think Atlanta will absolutely go for the Open Cup. I think they'll try to defend that trophy. So New York City, I think, is a really good complete team. I think Atlanta will have more highs and lows this season. New York City, unless it just doesn't work with Dyla, which it could. You never know. I don't think any of them go into the season without questions. And that's what's interesting about 2020 MLS is those three in the East, Columbus and New England will put a step below it. In the West, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Seattle, Portland, Sporting, everybody's got a significant question going into the season. Nobody is just out-and-out dominant. And maybe LAFC created their question by trading Walker Zimmerman when they did, but everybody's got a big question. It's a really interesting look at MLS this season because, you know, if those questions come back with negative answers, you could have some of those teams that we think are among the title contenders be, you know, chasing a playoff spot. It's going to be really interesting. I'm really excited about this MLS season the more we get closer to it because of the number of teams that can win the title and how each of them have something there that makes you wonder.
Ricky's West in order 1 to 7. LAFC, Seattle, the Galaxy, Sporting, Portland, FC Dallas, and San Jose.
I'm just more negative about Seattle right now because of their defense. So I've really got to wait on that one.
Daniel Price has spelled more differently for a third time.
Okay.
More predictions. 3-6 O's. The USMNT plays at Mercedes-Benz Stadium because U.S. Soccer stops being stupid and goes to a market that is hungry for soccer, contrary to, for whatever reason, popular belief.
Hold that thought. You're blaming U.S. Soccer for something that might not be U.S. Soccer's fault. There's plenty of things to blame U.S. Soccer for. Don't necessarily put this one on that list. Somebody's got to step up and promote the game. You know, is that the Atlanta Sports Council? Is it Atlanta United taking that on? Is it something else? I don't know. And I don't know why it hasn't happened. I don't know if it's just down to, you know, the cost of putting in grass over the turf field and they feel like they can make more money elsewhere. I don't know. I don't know the reasoning for it, so I don't want to throw all that shade on U.S. Soccer. But I do think in the next set of qualifiers, there should be a game for the United States in Atlanta. And I hope that whatever the reason is that we haven't seen it, that is resolved and we do get to see one because I think it would do really, really, really well.
CAFC has a poll for hashtag Freestyle Friday. I want to cite Heinemann for 2020, so I'm guessing this is MLS predictions leading into a poll.
Okay.
I think he will show a feel for connecting in the attack like he did in Campeones Cup and also maximizing assists. What do y'all think his over-under is for assists in all comps? And KFC will see everybody tomorrow. Is it going to be more than 10, or less than 10?
I think less than 10, but that's not a negative. I just think he's going to be in a more complementary role. He's going to be creating assists. And whether it's the pass, before the assist, he might pick up some secondary assists. That could happen. But I don't think he'll be as high up assisting like he did last year. I think he'll be in a deeper role. The question for me is, can the pairing of Mateus Rossetto and Emerson Heinemann work? Is it good enough defensively? You know, we saw LAFC do what they did with Edward Atuesta as a number 6, who is not a prototypical defensive midfielder. But in possession, and LAFC wanted to dominate possession, he was great. Can Heinemann be that kind of player and support a player like Rossetto who does want to step forward a little bit more and join Barco and Pitti? If he can, I think that's an incredible midfield. If he can't, Eric Remedi, Jeff Lorenowitz, Mo Adams will all be part of that conversation about playing those minutes next to a Rossetto, who I think will be a consistent starter with this group. I think what he brings to the table is big, but now him being in that mix means the defensive side of his central midfield partner is even more important because you don't want Rossetto sitting back as much to support somebody else. You'd like for him to get forward and be a fourth attacker going forward. Create a little bit of a diamond going forward with Rossetto, Barco, Pitti, and Joseph. But Hyndman next to him, I think, would be in just a little bit more defensive position. So I think the assists would be under 10, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a great season.
All right, folks, with thoughts and questions outside of predictions for the morning.
Okay.
Michael Valverde, kudos to Birmingham Legion and at JHeap722 for following up with the record number of fans that attended the Atlanta United match with a special offer for season tickets. So smart! !
That's very cool. That's very, very smart. And, we've talked about it with teams having big crowds for Chicharito coming to town, for other top, Mexican stars coming to town. These are the types of things that you have to do to follow up on when the visiting team brings in a big crowd or people come out to see the visiting team. You've got to do something to try to follow up to grow your business for the next time around. It can't just be about bringing in big teams and you're the Washington Generals in that scenario.
Marshall Voigt linked to a post from Soccer AM, pictures from FC Cavarelli de Rugi, who play in the Georgian 5th Division. They have their pitch inside the walls of an ancient castle. So Marshall's question for the hashtag Freestyle Friday: what is y'all's list of coolest / unique stadiums / pitches to play on?
I don't remember the stadium, but the one in Portugal with the mountain or giant rock formation right behind one of the goals, that one's awesome. That's a cool visual. I like some of the old stadiums that might not look so cool, but just have a bunch of history to it, and it looks like it's been built on top of itself as it's grown. I love some of the venues that I see when I watch soccer from Argentina. You get some very old venues, you get some kind of unique environments around it. Gimnasia's stadium is very cool, Diego Maradona's team, because it's like in a park, I think. So it's surrounded by trees. It's kind of in the middle of the forest. I think I think the stadium's called the Forest. Stuff like that's cool. I like uniqueness. I mean, when they all look the same, I think MLS went through this a little bit with the 20,000 seater that was all configured the same way. It got a little boring, a little stale. You'd flip a game on and glance at it and you didn't know where it was. I like when you turn a game on and you see the venue and you know immediately where it is. Those are the ones that stand out to me.
There's one stadium that's in Honduras, and the only reason I know this is because I started watching Honduran football. And there's a tree that they've let grow at basically the midfield line on the visitor's side. And the stadium is in such a cramped space. It's where Limon plays. Literally, you'll have fans sitting at basically right there at midfield, and they'll have shade from a tree over the top of them so they can watch the match. Same thing in the end zones where trees have overgrown and there's shade there. But not just the notion that there's a tree that has popped up and they've let it grow and it's a part of the fabric of the visitor's pitch. I thought that was really cool.
That's pretty cool.
The Colonel this morning Colonel.
What's up, Colonel?
Says the Nashville mayor won all the concessions he sought. The city saves money and keeps the team. Nashville FC gets a stadium started and a lot of not free publicity. Season ticket sales are finally picking up. Gotta love a win-win-win deal. Hashtag dead horse. Hashtag Freestyle Friday.
I don't think he got all the concessions he wanted. I think he got some. I think the team ponied up more money, but I think he was trying to put together a deal for the racetrack that didn't materialize as much as he would have liked. So he had to kind of come back hat in hand. It is a win. It's a win for him because they get more money. Although there was a really weird narrative going around yesterday that he got Nashville to pay for the whole stadium. They were already doing that. They were already funding the stadium. What he got was $19 million for infrastructure around it that the team agreed to pay for, and a commitment because of the way the lease agreement was worked. I guess the stadium is actually going to be the city's, and the team is paying to lease it. He got a commitment that if revenues don't hit the certain amounts to pay the lease, that instead of the city eating the cost, the team would pay, I think it's up to $35 million. That's not,
right.
They're getting $35 million. It depends on shortfalls. So it didn't change anything about the funding of the stadium. That was already being paid for by the team. It was a weird thing because I kept seeing that pop up about, they need to pay for the whole stadium because that's how it should be. That's what they were doing already. So nothing changed with that. He got more money and he prevented the risk of losing some money on things. So that's a win for the city, absolutely. He took a PR hit in a big way, and that's going to be something that we'll see in the next election cycle if it affects him. But I don't know if he truly won anything at the end of it. He got some more money, but is it going to affect his next campaign? Did he change the perception of business? Did he get everything he was looking for with the racetrack? I don't think he did. I think he honestly had to come back to the table because the racetrack deal didn't materialize like he wanted. And maybe that's why he went to the state capitol trying to find more money, and when it didn't happen, he came back to the table for the proposal that the team had already put on the table a few weeks ago.
The topic from hour number one, we were talking about negativity. Daniel thinks the negativity is turning away from MLS, but is still festering hard in the men's national team department.
Oh, it absolutely is. There's still a lot of it with MLS, and there's a lot of it with people who cover MLS and talk about MLS and broadcast in MLS, and it's just a lot of like yuck, same old MLS, and I don't know if that really benefits anything. I mean, yes, you have to talk about things that should change, and yes, you have to, I think, advocate for things to be better, for sure. But if the only thing that you say is, well, MLS isn't what they say they are, or MLS isn't that good, or England's better, or Mexico's better, or whatever, it gets back to that whole American soccer inferiority complex where we just don't think we can ever really be that good. And I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe that. There's no truth to that for me. Is American soccer the best in this hemisphere right now? Nope. Can it be? Yes. Can MLS be the top league in this hemisphere? Yes. Is it really far away from being that? No. Can it be among the 10 best leagues in the world? Yes. I don't think it's far away from that right now. I've said it many times over the last couple of years. I think MLS should be targeting to be on the level of France. That's where they can get to in a rather quick trajectory. The French league is seen as one of the top 5. It's PSG and a bunch of everybody else. The rest of the league, it's not that strong. The teams are not that valuable. MLS can get to that level. MLS can pass the Dutch league, the Belgian league, as a league that develops talent and moves it into the top 4 or 5 leagues in the world. Can do that quickly. Does that mean that some in MLS, in terms of owners and presidents and decision makers, have to broaden their thinking a bit? Yes, 100%. That's why I don't like the perception of this third designated player rule more than the actual reality of it. The perception looks like they want to cut spending back. It could a little bit, but not by the way that some people are trying to portray it. I do not think that is the case. And again, maybe I'm pumping sunshine there, but I don't think that's the case. So I just hope that people can be more realistic. And some would take that as, normally I think when you say like something needs to be more realistic, you need to tone down expectations. I think MLS as a league that's covered, and people who cover it, and even American soccer as a big whole giant thing, people need to actually amp up some expectations, because nobody wants to admit that it can be bigger, and I hope that changes. It's not there now, and I think to expect that it is unfair. But yes, it absolutely can be. and it needs to aspire to it. It needs to take the steps to get there. It's not a hopeless cause. And I feel like sometimes the idea of talking about American soccer being a big deal, people in soccer will tell you that that's a hopeless thing. And stop. But then what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Why do you want to keep it small? Why do you want to limit it? I want it to be big. I want mainstream media to talk about it. I want more people to talk about it. I want more coverage. Yes, that might threaten people's positions who are experts in the game right now. I want it to be bigger. I want it to be bigger. I want more voices. I want more coverage. I want more intelligent conversation around it. And I hope that that happens. Gatekeeping, tamping down expectations, being negative, limiting what American soccer can be doesn't do anything to actually help it. And I hope that that all changes at some point.
Atlanta United question from Matt Wagner.
Okay.
Do we have enough depth at center back right now? If Miles is hurt, then I know we still have Meza, Walks, Campbell, Escobar, and Larry, but if they were to get hurt too, then are we okay? Seemed to be an issue last year, too, when Parkey and Miles were hurt. Hashtag Freestyle Friday.
Yeah, but, I mean, you can't have 10 center backs. That's the challenge of a salary cap league and a league with a roster restriction. You know, if you have 2 starting players down in one position group, you're going to struggle. It doesn't matter. If Joseph got hurt, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you can't have a Joseph on the bench. So you have to pick and choose where you can have excess depth. And if, you know, right now you've got the overall group of Miles, Escobar, Meza, Campbell, Walks, Lorenowitz. That's 6. Could you go sign one more to give you some depth? Yeah, but I think you're probably looking at a player like a Lawrence Wyke or a Patrick Nielsen, you know, a player who would be in a reserve or a supplemental roster spot and would be at the bottom of that list. That would be the next one. I don't think you would be able to bring in somebody that would be a starter on most teams. Because why would they come? Because they're not going to be a starter here if they're at that level. And then you have a good group. So I don't think you're looking to upgrade. That's what's tough. And it's always a challenge when you're building a team, but you just have limitations in place. You know, if MLS wants to get to a point where they have no roster restrictions, you can sign as many players as you want to pay for, and you have no salary cap, well, then it's just down to the team to go spend more money. But then you still have to manage the minutes conversation and the expectations of how many minutes and those things that every team deals with. I don't think any team has unlimited depth in every position. No team in the world has that. Manchester City's struggling for depth at center back with injuries, and they can go do what they want. So it's hard. I think you're probably going to see a smaller signing like a Wyke or a Nielsen who could provide extra depth there while playing a good bit for Atlanta United too.
Derek Creighton wants to know if the USL Championship is still trying to send MLS teams down to League One.
That was a rumor, and it's just the concern of sometimes about rumors being taken as fact. That was a rumor and a report that never really went anywhere. I think there's a conversation that USL has to have about how they want to manage that. I don't think it's smart to just mandate that everybody has to go to League One. And if you create a promotion relegation system, well, then that's what will solve it. I think that's the better way of solving it. Because there's Real Monarchs won the thing last year. They shouldn't be in League One. Some teams probably should be in League One. And if you can sort it out on the field in the situation, that would be better for the partnership with MLS and USL, which that partnership solidified USL. And took USL to another level that they were not at before the partnership happened. So I don't think USL wants to anger its partner. And if there are clubs who want to stay in championship, they should have the option to do so.
Josh Airy comes back in and says, hashtag Sunshine Pumper is forever your nickname.
That's fine.
Where Lieutenant Dave says, social media is at its base mostly caustic. Between hot takes and pro writers crying for clicks, picking on soccer brings attention. Ignore that. Continue to pump sunshine with a hashtag.
I will. I'm too far down the sunshine pumping life to give it up now. But yeah, there's a big part of it's just like the song thing. It's easier to write a sad song, connect with a sad song, than it is to write a happy song. So it's easier to get clicks with a negative article that gets people riled up in that way than to write a positive piece about growth that doesn't have a hook of, like, yeah, now I'm mad. It doesn't have that. So I get it. I don't like it, but I get it.
And Alex Pacine has sent a GIF of a unicorn that really has no body but a rainbow tail that is being ridden, and he says, "You just keep pumping up that sunshine, Jason. I'm here for it."
Yeah, we'll try. I mean, I just want to be real about it. It's maybe it's a little bit of the Atlanta in me, where Atlanta has always been a city, with boosters. It's about growing things, and it's about pushing forward, and yeah, this isn't great, but let's get this done right over here. Let's keep going. Forward Atlanta was a marketing thing that Atlanta's pulled out a few different times. I think the first time it was used was in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. And it came back a couple times as like a city motto and business plan. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's just that I've kind of wanted to see soccer grow and want to see it growing, and I want to bring more people into it. And I think you do that by telling people about what's good, and also, yes, when bad things happen, you talk about it. You have to be realistic, but I think you're going to grow the game and grow the product and affect better change by positive talk rather than negative talk. I mean, if you're just consistently negative, people will tune you out. If you balance it, people will listen. It just seems an easy thing for me. Maybe that's just how my brain works. If somebody's constantly negative, at some point I'm just like, stop, or I stop listening.
Joey Logan wants to know if there are any GHSA matches that caught our eye tonight.
Yeah, the one that's probably the game of the night is Paideia and Decatur. You get these situations early in the season. Woodward and McIntosh is a pretty good one, too.
Yep.
You get situations early in the season where you get kind of different teams at different classifications playing, and some interesting matchups can result. Those were the two in the metro area that jumped out to me, and I believe it's Paideia at Decatur and Woodward at McIntosh. So down in Peachtree City and over in Decatur, you've got some good matchups tonight.
Yeah, I also looked at Lambert, North Forsyth, and Lassiter and Wheeler as two there, but a lot of the action is pushed pretty much to Tuesday, Wednesday, because teams might have had midweek matches, and so they're trying to space it out a little bit. Tuesday, you're looking at Roman Cartersville, Tucker Centennial, Dalton and Fort Payne, North Paulding and Marietta, and Keith Filer, who has been keeping us up to date on everything going on at Houston County with their incredibly insane, prolifically scoring offense on the girls' side. I think they have Dodge County on Wednesday.
Nice. The U15 and U17 Generation Adidas Cup qualifying is starting today, and there is a group of teams playing at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground, and it is open to the public, but there is not on-site parking, so rideshare services is the way to go if you want to go see it. Schedule U15s and U17s. Atlanta United is part of this, obviously, and I'm scrolling down to this group. New York City and Atlanta in the U17 group is today at 3:30. Atlanta plays Montreal tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And then on the 17th, Atlanta and Toronto at 1 o'clock. So that's on Monday, correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. That's Monday.
U15s, scrolling down. U15s for Atlanta play Orlando tonight at 6 o'clock. They play Cincinnati tomorrow at 3:30. And then they play New York City on Monday at 11 a.m. All at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground. It is open to the public, but no parking on site. So you've got to use rideshare, Uber, Lyft, or what have you.
Couple of other thoughts. People are still in the queue here.
Okay.
Shiva has a question. There are some narratives out there about the 2020 roster for Atlanta that, quote, this is now FDB and Carlos's team in a way pressure is on them, mainly Carlos to head us in the right direction, end quote. I tend to disagree. Hasn't Carlos been there from day one?
Not day one, but pretty close. He was hired early 2015, and McDonough was hired after him. And McDonough reported to Carlos. So I don't know. I don't know where that narrative is started. Don't get it. But it's not like Carlos wasn't involved in making decisions when the team was good, so I don't know why you're going to start saying that, oh, I don't like this, so it's all on him. I got nothing. I got nothing on that. I don't know. But, yes, Carlos was hired before Paul McDonough, after Darren Eales, but not by a large margin. It was early 2015 when he came in.
Waffle House United this morning. Prediction is no empanadas in Mercedes-Benz Stadium again this season. With that in mind, what Latin food is served at MBS?
I don't know. Pretty sure there's tacos, and I don't know what other taco options there are. I don't know, like, if they get into the burritos or the quesadilla side of things. I want to say they do, but don't quote me. I'd like to see more. I would like to see the classic Argentine choripan make an appearance. It's basically like a hot dog. It's a chorizo sausage, just arranged differently, but it's the equivalent of a hot dog. It's really good when it's done properly.
Is it spicy?
And that's settle down over there, spicy guy. It's a chorizo. It's not the Mexican chorizo that's crumbly. It's a sausage. Mexican chorizo and Argentine chorizo are very different things. I would not call it spicy at all.
Okay.
It's like a hot dog. It is the equivalent. It is the sporting thing that you buy, just like people buy a hot dog, and they bought a hot dog at a sporting event in the United States since there were sporting events in the United States. I guess.
But you said sausage, and here in the South, folks gravitate toward Conecuh County sausage, which is spicy.
No, people don't gravitate to that. That's a very small subset of sausage, my friend. That's like one brand, and it's one kind of sausage that's spicy. Sausage is a wide margin of food. Man, got to get you out more.
Hey, you're the one that got me hooked on Las Brasas and their version of chicken fried rice, man. The boss actually said, she goes, hey.
Ay, Dios mío. It's one step in the right direction, at least.
And, so Chris Hutchison has a follow-up food question.
Okay.
Who has the best tater tots in the metro area?
I mean, how do you define better tater tots than somebody else? I mean, bad tater tots are easy if they're like overdone and they're kind of hard.
Underdone.
I don't like the soup. I would rather go underdone than overdone. I don't like the super hard, crunchy ones.
Yeah.
So,
no.
I mean, yes, in terms of preparation, sure, but outside of they're cooked right. What makes a good tater tot ahead of another one? I don't know. The tater tots at the brew house are good. I have sampled them quite a few times.
Good plug. 9,412 TVs.
We were talking about tater tots, but yes. And they will have the Atlanta Motagua match on Tuesday night if you are so interested. I don't know. I mean, you're the one who likes like tater tot nachos replacing the tortilla chips with tater tots, and there you go, getting excited about this.
If it's done well, but if it's done well, it is very, very filling, very, very thick.
Of course, it is. It's potatoes.
It's amazing. If it's done right and you have the right fixins to go with it, then that kind of a tacho is amazing. Yeah, that was where we went for. Well, but it's tater. Well, you can't, because it's not a nacho. What are you going to call it? It's got the nacho stuff that's associated with being over the top of the tortilla chip, but it's instead of tortilla chips, it's tater tots.
I'm offended for nachos. Gimmick and harumph.
I didn't get a harumph out of you.
Man.
Michael Head. You ask why the negativity in American soccer. Michael says it starts at the top of the heap. U.S. soccer reaps what they've sown. The negativity of the men's national team is an overarching pile of garbage.
I'm going beyond that, though. No, I understand what you're saying, and yes, right now I get it. But people generally, when they talk about soccer in the United States, and just look at, I mean, it's a joke when the U.S. national team's going to play what the Twitter timeline will look like. It's just, whether they're playing well or not, it's just it's the same with a lot of teams. It's the same around MLS. It's easy to just be negative about it. I agree. Like right now, yeah, the U.S. Soccer Federation is doing nothing to change that narrative, but it's not just U.S. soccer. It's everything around it. It's just generally soccer is just a negative place in terms of the way it's discussed, the way it's written about, the way it's podcasted about, like all of it. And then all of it's not negative. Are there negative aspects? Yeah, 100%. But all of it's not negative. And for just the general description of American soccer talk to be negative and cynical is not good. I hope that changes. And yeah, I hope the Federation changes some of the things that are creating the negativity about the men's national team. But I'm even talking bigger than that. I just hope the general mood of American soccer is, yes, positive things are happening, and you can actually talk about them in a positive way. And not everything has to be, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this is stupid, this is bad, this is awful. Yay, soccer. Can we stop doing that, please?
Couple more before we go. Joe Bost has now officially given your nickname a hashtag.
Sure.
Hashtag SSP.
Well, you might want to check other abbreviations. I don't want to be tagged into something else.
And Daniel also says the best tater tots in MBS have to go to a small place in the back corner of the 300 level. He says he can't remember the name, but they're sweet potato tots.
Now that's good.
Awesome.
That's different. I like that.
Not a
that
sweet
sounds
potato
really
guy.
Good.
Nope.
What?
Nah.
What are you ranting about? You don't like sweet potatoes?
Nope.
Why?
Never have.
You don't like anything.
No,
you're one of these negative people.
I am not a negative person.
About food you are. And about music
food I
you
am.
Are.
Well, because my tastes are pretty much, 1988 and backwards?
So American soccer people's tastes are 1988 and backwards too?
No, you're really taking a big leap there. You said music. I said music specifically. My taste.
No, you're negative about music and food.
Well, I'm just negative about spicy food. I've just never been a spicy food guy.
Sweet potatoes are in that too, and they're not spicy. You're negative about food. It's okay.
It's just I can't do sweet potatoes. That was forced down my throat during holidays when I was a kid. It's like nope.
Sweet potato fries are excellent, and
no, they're not.
Man, you're getting bold about why such hatred for sweet potatoes?
I just have never been a fan. Like I said, you get something thrust down your throat. You must eat this as a child. You instantly rebel, and that has never changed.
That's why you have to have it in different ways. Sweet potato, like tater tot. That I'm intrigued. That sounds good. That's not the classic holiday like sweet potato souffle, which I don't really like. Sweet potato fries are good. Roasted sweet potatoes are really good. Sweet potatoes in ceviche in the Peruvian style is really good. There's lots of good things for sweet potatoes.
Did not like ceviche when I went to Costa Rica this time.
Of course you don't like ceviche.
Yeah, but the boss was shocked that I actually ate it, because it was in front of me, and I ate it because I'd never had it, and so I ate the whole thing, and I was like, nope. Didn't happen.
That's just sad. No, it did happen, and you still complained about it because you're negative. You're a soccer writer about food and music. You're an American soccer negative thunderstorm.
I'm a nattering nabob
of
negativism when it comes to food and music. Sure, I'll be that guy.
Okay.
And Josh Airy Josh Airy needs help. He's conflicted.
Uh-oh.
And this looks like you might be posing it to the entire SDH universe here.
Uh-oh, that can get dangerous.
All right. He says he won't be in Nashville since he'll be in London. But It's a great weekend for football. He needs to choose either West Ham and Southampton or Fulham and Preston North End. I would go with the latter because of what it means to the championship table.
Yeah, I would too. I'm with you on that.
Then, Sunday, he says either Tottenham and Wolves or try to scout tickets for the Carabao Cup Man City Aston Villa match.
I'll go the former.
Yeah, because if it's at the new Tottenham Stadium, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
If it's at Molineux, that's a great environment. Man City Aston Villa is probably going to end up being something like 4-1, so it may not necessarily be the most exciting thing in the world. I'd go with Tottenham and Wolves.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Daniel says, I'm the guy who orders the chicken sandwich for safety at a 2-Michelin star restaurant known for something spectacular. Daniel, I'm the guy who, when he goes to Waffle House, looks at the safety rating, and if it is low, that to me means that Waffle House has great food. Traditionally, that's just how I've been when it comes to Waffle House. Give me something that's like in the 60s, because I know that the grease has been there for a while, and it seeps into all the food, and it adds that little extra to it. Something in the 90s at a Waffle House means it's too clean. And it's like just you're reading the book verbatim. You're not sitting there and interpreting the book.
I don't even know where that came from, but okay.
And Chris Ashley says,
houses.
Yeah, I love dirty Waffle House food. And so, yes. Yeah, why not both? Chris Ashley comes in, what's worse? Hashtag angry gatekeeping soccer Twitter or my food takes.
It's a tough call.
Why not both?
Exactly. It's a very tough call.
And so, of course, was it that's the old El Paso young girl in the GIF that you posted?
Yes.
Yes. So there's circular irony in that as well. Anything else you want to talk about before we go?
No. People need to go rest up and get ready to come out and see us tomorrow at Wild Heaven West End. We'll see you from 10 to 2. You can have the El Hefeweizen, get ready for Motagua on Tuesday. We'll get you set. We'll talk about Motagua. We'll talk about Atlanta United. We will talk to representatives from Resurgence, Faction, Footy Mob, Terminus Legion. We will be accepting your used soccer equipment for a middle school program that is getting off the ground in Clayton County. Soccer in the Streets will be there. There are proceeds from beer sales going to them. They'll have activities for kids and adults as well. It's going to be a celebration of the 2020 season. We will be pumping sunshine from Wild Heaven West End tomorrow because that's what we're going to try to do in 2020. Everybody's going to be thunderstorming. We'll try to be bringing in some sunshine from time to time. We'll also have some material later today for you. John's got a couple 1v1s coming as well. I'll have a hashtag for the kids with Jonathan Cueva of Rockport Soccer in Gainesville, and we'll have some crumpets and espresso getting you ready for the game around the world this weekend. I'll be looking at Argentina. I'm sure Nick will be ranting in Italian about his Milan, and John might have some juice box updates from England.
Check.
Okay.
Accurate.
So lots of stuff on the app, lots of stuff on soccerdownhere.net the rest of the day, and we'll be seeing you tomorrow morning, 10 to 2 at Wild Heaven West End. Thanks, and mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.